So I recently completely refinished this basement stairwell in order to get rid of some super dated shiplap from the 80s. And while I still have to put a handrail back up there, ripping out these particular shiplap panels was long overdue. You see, after 40 plus years of the previous homeowner not running a dehumidifier, this stuff had taken on a certain musty odor. And even after dehumidifying the space all year, we couldn't totally get rid of the smell. Plus, I absolutely hated the landlord special they did on it, not to mention the overspray all over the handrails and door frame. So I decided it was time to just yank it all out of there and finish the drywall underneath the panels.
Wow.
So for today's video, I'm going to walk you through every step of the process, from the demolition all the way to the finishing, as well as go over how much I spent on materials, just in case you're thinking about taking on a similar project. But before we get to the details, if you find this type of content useful, please consider hitting that like button or even subscribing, as it really helps out the channel. But not if you have a money allergy. I know there are probably a few people out there allergic to money who absolutely hate this channel. So if your seasonal money allergies are beginning to flare up and you couldn't bear the idea of saving a few dollars, do not, I repeat, do not hit that subscribe button. Okay, so let's get right into it. As you've probably seen from some of the shots in that intro, when demoing this stuff out, after ripping out all the trim, since I knew I was going to try and finish the drywall under there, my primary concern was trying to get the panels off the wall in a way that would minimize the damage to the existing boards underneath. So what I ended up doing was Okay, real quick disclaimer here. While I did used to do quite a bit of finishing work, I am by no means a general contractor, and as such, I have to recommend that, should you decide to demo out anything in your home, even something as cosmetic as shiplap paneling, please first check all permitting requirements and code for your area, as well as have a licensed contractor take a look at the job, check for utilities, make sure nothing is structural, etc., etc. And then once you're worry-free with your project green-lighted, you can get to it. Alright, so to get these off the walls with as few paper rips as possible, I ended up wedging an old 3-inch mud knife between the panel and the board, and then would hammer my pry bar in there. This allowed me to generate enough leverage to loosen up the panels, but at the same time, wasn't putting huge chunks into the drywall. I found that I had to repeat this process every few feet, and just make my way around the perimeter of each board, as there was quite a bit of construction adhesive underneath. This particular panel that I decided to film here was also nailed in along the stair skirting area in a few different places, so I actually ended up having to cut along the base of this one. But most of them came down with just the aforementioned pry bar technique. Okay, so with all the panels removed, I was on to phase 2, and here you can see that before we can put any mud down, things will need just an ungodly amount of prep work. Not only will I have to take off all the excess adhesive and then clean, sand, and seal all the paper rips, but there's also a few chunks that will have to be patched entirely, and then all of the joints will still have to be pre-filled, taped and mudded, and then likely built out quite a bit. Even with just a 3-inch knife, you can see how far off this one is. Oh, and there was also this huge missing section down here, and unfortunately, it's a bit too high to hide unless we build up like a 10-inch baseboard or something, which I'm not sure would look that great. Now, a handful of the inside corners were still intact, but you can see just how nasty this 40-year-old adhesive is, which is a great segue into the process of repairing these rips in the paper. So the problem is that if you don't prep this surface, once you start putting the mud on there, you're going to end up with what they call a blister, which is essentially a little air bubble between the paper and the gypsum. In order to avoid that, you'll need to first rip off all the loose bits, and then sand the surface a bit, so there's no more little feathery shreds of paper sticking out. A great little trick to figure out how much you need to remove is to tap the surface and listen. Basically, anywhere that doesn't sound solid is where the surface paper has been pulled from the board, and you'll need to get rid of that. So for this particular job, my workflow was to repeat that process on every spot by hand, hit everything with the Orbital Sander, but then had a few different options when it came time to seal all these rips. Initially, I was spraying on this 3M adhesive and then working it in with an old mud knife. And while this has worked great on smaller jobs in the past, you can see there's quite a bit of texture with this method, both from the knife as well as some of the surfaces wicking, and I was a bit worried as to whether or not the seal would remain intact after having to sand everything back down before mudding it up. Plus, you'd probably need like 50 cans of this stuff. So after doing a fair amount of prep with the spray adhesive and also hanging that missing board there, I needed to streamline things a bit. So I first tried rolling on this guard surface sealer, but found it still left quite a few blisters, before then switching to this shellac-based bin primer, which actually worked great. Oh, and you can see that this area wasn't very square, so I ended up having to pre-fill those inside corners, along with just about every joint, before taping things up. So there's a separate workflow for pre-filling these with mesh tape and hot mud or quickset that I'll try and link to in the description. But this video is more of like a project overview, so I'm trying to keep it on the shorter side. But let me know in the comments if you'd like a deeper dive into anything that you see here, as there's a good chance I'll have the footage to edit something else together for a future video. Okay, so here you can see that I've added that footer board in the right corner. And I've also pre-filled most of the gaps and bigger joints with the 90-minute hot mud, and even threw in the mesh tape where needed. The paper rips you see are now sealed with what's basically like a top coat of the shellac-based primer, and I've let that dry a whole day before putting any mud on there. So here's a closer look at those pre-filled joints on the right side, and if we swing over here, you can see I also pre-filled a few of the gaps around that area where we needed to patch that big hole. I also pre-filled that joint there, and right away you can see just how much we'll need to build up this spot where our patch meets the joint. It's a bit hard to tell on video, but all these joints are just miles off plumb, not even close to what you'd want when hanging new boards. Oh, and speaking of building things up, here's a look at just how gnarly the surface actually is among all these nasty paper rips. Lucky for us, my 40-inch skimming blade works miracles on spots like these. But before I could get to that step in the process, I needed to finish out the bottom area here with a few corner beads. Alright, so skipping ahead another week or so, you can see I've glued and mudded on some low-profile vinyl corner beads. And I've also got all of our joints taped up and feathered out maybe like 6 to 8 inches or so. Now if we take a look at this line here, I ended up gluing on a J-bead on the base of our board for a super clean look on that transition. And you can see we've also feathered out our inside corners a bit throughout this whole section. Alright, so with most all of the big prep work finished, it was time to move on to the next phase of the project, which is to smooth out this crazy amount of texture left over from our sealed paper rips. So at this point, you'll need to get a pretty significant amount of mud on the wall. And if you're doing this in a finished space as part of a renovation, like I'm doing here, then you'll want to focus on minimizing your sanding so that you can reduce the amount of dust as much as possible. Which is a great segue into this tool that you see me using here, namely a 40-inch skimming blade. Now, I've feathered out quite a few cracks and patches over the past few years, and mostly with this 8-inch knife here, but even with as good as my knife technique has become, the big advantage that you get with this 40-inch blade is not only the time you save by being able to level a much larger area in a single pass, but also when the mud dries, you're going to end up with a lot fewer lift-off marks, so way less sanding. I should mention too here that if you do have a big mud sculpting project like this to do, you'll probably want to roll the mud on there with a nap roller, just like you see here on the right side of your screen. And if you're not familiar with this guy, his channel is called The Vancouver Carpenter. And for my money, he's the best drywaller on YouTube. I'll go ahead and link to this video in the description so you can check him out. But anyway, I ended up using this 8-inch blade. But one of the big advantages of going ahead with the nap roller is not only the speed, in that you can get a lot more mud on the wall faster, but it's also quite a bit easier to really work it in there and get rid of air bubbles. So pretty much the exact opposite of what you see me doing here. For example, you can see this spot here I ended up having to skim a second time, as I didn't really work the mud in there very thoroughly, and then ended up with a ton of bubbles that I needed a second pass to fill after sanding. But getting back to the topic of sanding, feast your eyes on the second tool that made this project so much easier, which is this vacuum hose adapter for my Orbital Sander. Now, I recently did a dedicated video on this adapter here, as well as the skimming blade, which I'll link in the description, but let me give you a quick overview since it really helped me out on this job. So for years now, when doing any kind of drywall finishing or wood sanding, I've just held the end of my central wall vacuum hose onto the back of my sander in order to minimize the dust going into the air. Now the problem with doing this for any sizable area of drywall is that you're going to have some instability with the sander rocking back and forth atop the hose, and in turn can dig some sander-shaped impressions into your wall pretty quickly. But not with this adapter. They've got it machined so solid that this stable connection allows you to reliably hover the sander plumb against the wall, while also creating a way tighter seal, further reducing the amount of dust getting into the air. I found too that it's way quieter as it seals off tons of the vacuum noise that was previously getting through that gap between the hose and the orbital. So it's obviously got some benefits over just holding the hose in there. And by the way, they make these in 3 diameters to fit all different sizes of hoses, as well as for various makes and models of sanders. I actually slipped some weather stripping into their 1 7/8" model to get a real snug fit onto my central vacuum hose, as I believe these are more so intended for standard Shop Vac sizes. I've also heard that hooking in a dust separator atop a bucket downstream on your Shop Vac line is a great way to prolong the life of both your filters and motor. And just as a testament to how airtight this thing is compared to when I was just holding it on there, you can see after sanding 5 to 6 feet of liftoff marks, I've barely got any dust down here on my drop cloth. So yeah, pretty remarkable increase in suction there. But as good of a job as this thing does, if you're going to be doing any amount of sanding, definitely get yourself a NIOSH-approved respirator like you see me wearing throughout this project. These are great for both painting and sanding and give you a real tight seal across the top of your nose, which tends to come in handy when you're hand sanding your inside corners. Just make sure you clean it and switch out the filters as per the manufacturer's instructions, and you should be good to go. Okay, so moving right along, here's a few quick before and after shots of how things looked once I primed over my sanded skim coat with a PVA primer. Once you're done skimming and sanding, be sure to get all the dust off the wall before priming, otherwise you can run into adhesion issues. That light and this switch you'll see in a moment here are also new. And I always recommend that you hire a licensed professional for anything electrical, because as Dirty Harry says,
man's got to know his limitations.
So at this point in the project, I needed to cut in the stair skirting before painting anything. And also, if you look close there, you can see that after mudding and priming literally dozens of paper rips, I only ended up with 3 spots where the PVA had some adhesion issues. In all 3 of them, I had to go back in there and cut out the blister, hit them with the shellac primer, reapply the mud, sand it out, and then prime them again. You can really see the difference in sheen there, but shouldn't be anything a few coats of paint won't fix. So anyway, what you see me doing here is first screwing the skirt board into the wall so it rests just atop the stair risers, and then I'm going to go ahead and measure out the part of the board to be cut out. This is a little more complicated than usual, as I've got the added challenge of dealing with the padding and carpet, and in order to compensate for this, I built a bit of an offset angle into my measuring tool. All I'm doing here is measuring the rise, and then the run of each individual stair, marking it onto the board, and then connecting the dots, so to speak, in order to get the stair line marked on the board. Now, I already figured out the dimensions of the nose on each stair, so I can also draw in the approximate depth of each stair nose, as they protrude out over each of the treads. Oh, and I forgot to mention earlier, do yourself a favor and place the screws in a spot on the board below your cut line. And also make sure that wherever it is that your screw hits the wall is well underneath the end height of your stair skirting. So with my board off the wall, I came to realize I had left some extra height in my line as the board was sitting atop the stair noses and padding when I took my measurement. So I needed to translate everything up a bit, which is what you see me doing here. And you know, I've heard it said that it's only a mistake if you can't fix it. And I sometimes think about that in situations like this, and it just makes me feel a lot better about myself. So I'm basically making sure I have a full 90-degree angle at the base of each stair in order to get a shorter skirt board. I'll link a super helpful video that I found in the description if you're more interested in this process. With everything marked, it was time to go ahead and rip these with the jigsaw. Remember that it's a lot easier than you think to get hurt using a tool like this, so please be sure to take all safety precautions as recommended by the manufacturer, as well as wear the appropriate personal protective equipment. Since I was only able to get around 10 feet of board into the stairwell at a time, I ended up splicing in the last few feet. What I did here was essentially cut a 45 onto each side of the board to create what they call a scarf joint, and then once I had everything nailed and adhesive tight against the wall, I went ahead and reinforced the seam with bondo. This stuff is super high VOC and does not sand well, so I'm really trying to use as little as possible and feather it out as much as I can here. Also, I 100% don't recommend doing a skirting this way, as this fix was super difficult, and also there's still the possibility that this could crack if there's a bit of unanticipated movement in the wall. Just do everything you can to get a long enough board in there. So you might notice these skirt boards are on the taller side, and the idea was to tie them in with the 5.5-inch baseboard that you see at the top here. I believe I still could have cut my skirt board height around an inch shorter and moved the cut further to the right, but you'll basically want to mark where the two are going to meet and then redo the cut on the baseboard to match. Okay, so fast forwarding a bit, at this point, I've got all my joints sanded and primed on the skirting and baseboards, and am starting to trim in the walls. For the sections that are a bit out of reach in terms of cutting in with a brush, I actually did that popular online trick where you create a tight line with painter's tape, then smear a tiny bit of caulk over top that line, then paint over the caulk. And you end up with a way cleaner line than compared to just tape alone. And if you do decide to try this method, just be sure to carefully remove your tape in the manner that you see me doing here right after painting. Pulling it off at this particular angle helps lessen the surface tension a bit, so you're less likely to rip off any chunks of paint along with the tape. It's still a bit risky though, which is why I tend to just cut everything in by hand when I'm not awkwardly positioned on a stool midway down a stairwell. So not a great contrast ratio here with this particular color, but you can see just how quickly you can get a nice and tidy clean line with this caulked over tape method, even when working with an incredibly awkward stance. Also, when you go to cut in the trim on the skirting, try and sneak up on it, like you see me doing here. I'm leading with a wet edge and just moving the bead closer and closer to the line with a few passes. I'm doing this before caulking so I can then just paint my acrylic caulk line to match the same color as the skirting. Oh, and with all this cutting in, I try and build things out enough so that I can comfortably stay an inch or so away from my line once I have a paint-filled roller in my hands. I should mention too that this is a brand new Worcester brush that I'm using, and it had been a number of years since I'd gotten myself a nice brush, and it's amazing how absolutely enjoyable it makes this whole process. Alright, so fast forward again, and now we've got our skirting caulked in and the walls all rolled. Which brings us to the last painful step in the project, which was to tape off all of our carpet and get a nice uniform coat of paint onto our skirting and baseboards. So keeping the carpet on there, along with the half-inch of padding underneath, was definitely the more risk-adverse move, given the number of small children that love flying down this stairwell, but it sure don't make painting these here skirt boards any easier. So I'm using a pure white semi-gloss from Glidden here that I've cut with a bit of Floetrol. If you've never used Floetrol before, it's an additive that's used to remove brush strokes, and in my experience, it does a pretty decent job in tough spots like this. I'm basically looking to first fill in that less visible triangle-shaped section, and then really lead with a wet edge and get a lightly and uniformly applied diagonal stroke down the top few inches. I figure this might be my best bet to minimize any unsightly brush strokes, especially ones coming from multiple directions. But with that portion of the project complete, we were left with a pretty clean look, especially when compared to what we had going on before. And when all was said and done, my material costs ended up coming in way below what I'd been quoted. As I'd suspected, most of this job was going to be labor hours anyway. And on that point, please comment below if I should post my wife's reaction when I show her the bill for all these dad hours. But anyway, that's it for this one. And if you've made it this far, please take a moment to click that like button or consider subscribing, as you don't want to miss the special handrail installation that I've got planned to finish out this renovation. Be sure to check all local code and permitting requirements before taking on any projects, and I hope to see you next time. Thanks.